If you haven't heard yet, Kingdom Come Deliverance is a game that is pretty much booming on Steam. It's a unique game that marvels on its authenticity and historical realism, and to quote Yahtzee, reality is a cruel and unintuitive place with frustrating gameplay mechanics, which is why it is so odd that games try so hard to resemble it. And with the case of Kingdom Come Deliverance, it's one of those games where you don't really need to expect having power fantasy and fun, because when some of the garbage mechanics like bow and arrow get in your way, the game can pull off the, well, this is a realistic interpretation of the 15th century, so suck it and learn to get good. Nah, I'm just kidding. I haven't played the game personally, but I have heard a lot about how the bow and arrow mechanics are complete garbage. But regardless of that, everyone has praised it left and right for being a very immersive, very authentic game. And so many people bought it and played it, probably including me in the future when I got some money to spare. But the problem is, this game already spawns a lot of controversy. Why? Because one of the developers, Daniel Favre, supported Gamergate, as in one of the developers recognized that game journalists are a bunch of corrupt corporate hacks. There are so many stupid and ridiculous articles that come out talking about Kingdom Come Deliverance even way back before the game was released. It was primarily concerning about how the game is authentic to the medieval times but somehow didn't include representations of people of color. I am no historical expert, but I am pretty sure that the medieval times are incredibly homogeneous. No complaints to Dynasty Warriors 9? This article is from Kotaku in 2014, proving that Kotaku in 2014 is just about as cancerous as Kotaku right now. It started off by saying that some random account on Tumblr called Medieval POC is an awesome internet historian, the same way a doomsday machine architect is an awesome member of the parliament. The article is just the writer completely baffled that people got angry when somebody asked this simple innocent question and the possibility of the significant presence of people of color in the medieval times. I don't blame you. I also asked Kotaku where your journalistic integrity is, and they called me a woman-hating misogynist. I'm still baffled even after 4 years, so I guess the feelings are mutual, except, you know, in a completely different direction. Then, completely out of character for Kotaku, the writer highlighted one random comment from Tumblr telling the awesome internet historian to kill himself. Herself. Themselves. I don't even know the identity of this random Tumblr account, the same way I don't know about the identity of any other Tumblr accounts, especially the porn ones. I don't know why you have to defend this random account on Tumblr so much. Is it because this random account asks a question that you personally find interesting? Hitler also asked very interesting questions about the existence of the white race. Does that mean that we have to defend him? Like a low-grade amateur fanfiction writer, the writers of Kotaku don't know what show don't tell means. The message is non-white people in medieval times are pretty interesting, right? And Kotaku's way of conveying this message is non-white people in medieval times are pretty interesting, right? At least fanfiction writers put some effort in. They put effort in finding ways to make two of their favorite characters to bonk the beds, but effort nonetheless. It's not really about the presentation in the case for this article, it's about whether or not I'm convinced that this is interesting. And for more than 2 years, the question of whether or not there are non-white people in anything is a question that is about as interesting as where will you take a dump this morning? I do not give a crap. And even if I do, you can snap a random lewd picture in my face and I would instantly forget what I was talking about. Let me show you. Boom. Wait, what was I talking about again? Oh yeah, Kingdom Come Deliverance, who apparently still fails to deliver representation as if gamers actually care about it. Oh, wait a second. Apparently, I've been informed that this is a satire website, but if I contrast this to the legit article from Kotaku, then my heart is saddened that there are some people who took this completely seriously. If I am a game developer, which technically I am to very small projects, I'll rephrase that. If I am a game developer working at big studios and I support a Gamergate or go against the progressives, I would probably get lynched by my coworkers who are constantly fed with ideas about how diversity is the best thing ever. Well, you don't have to join big game development or publishing studios, especially the evil ones, because you're going to need to deal with social justice indoctrination, and in the Subnautica's case, absolutely spineless cowards. Turns out putting yourself in a space where people can tolerate your viewpoints is a very productive thing to do. The last thing that you want is to have a boss that would fire you for having stupid opinions on the internet, which is like firing someone for taking a dump. Everybody does that, so what makes you morally superior here, boss? Well, they piss off dumbasses at Reset Era. Oh, that's alright then, carry on. Seriously, to the developers of Subnautica, what good will come in firing that sound engineer? And most importantly, what good will come in censoring your own Steam forums that talk about it? These progressives will never be pleased, and they do not buy or play your games. I think these two laws should be written somewhere in big huge billboards and be constantly fed to people, just like how the aliens fed those obey messages in They Live. But we don't want to get too Orwellian. I mean, you're watching a YouTube video of a guy with a face too big for his own body with a badly animated lip sync that feeds you with problematic ideas with the voice of someone who badly needs to have a gallon of water shoved down his throat, whose job is to constantly remind people of the two basic principles of life that for some reason nobody has picked up on. And if you're noticing a fade in this video in giant big text telling you about those two principles, you are slowly learning the truth about this matter and learn about my true alien identity, which is why I'm going to HQ. I think we have someone who can see. Can you please send me your best alien? I really can't imagine working at big journalistic outlets that write politically slanted articles. Do these people write articles because they genuinely believe these things, or are they writing it for the clicks? I am legitimately curious, and the situation can get pretty blurry. Either way, I would certainly choose not to work in any of their workplace. As evidenced by the James Damore case, working at Silicon Valley would at least require you to have some of your brain cells killed so that you can accept social justice as your new religion. The process of demoralization would end up having the victims to be unable to accept facts, even when thousands of them are being thrown in their face, unless they're thrown into a life-threatening situation like a 24 hours internet blood sports marathon. Anyway, going back to this seemingly satirical article, the last paragraph quite literally tells people to not buy the game altogether. If this is satirical, then link it to a website of games developed by people of color without irony, as if the quality of their game should be judged merely on the skin color of the developers. And to make matters even more questionable, the last paragraph on this seemingly satirical website turns out to be closer to reality, as there are tons and tons of people who begged others to not buy the game, and the reason is because one of the game developers supported Gamergate. Oh, you warlocks of Tumblr, how many times do you have to resurrect this dead movement? Also, warlocks of Tumblr, I might manipulate people to suit my agenda, but at least I am rational in where our society is headed. That boycott is working out so well for you because the game not only sold 500,000 copies, but it is one of the most played games on Steam right now. This proves me that the progressives don't buy video games because if they do, then that boycott would be more significant. They are not gamers, they're leeches off of this society. They're going to invade whatever sorts of popular entertainment media right now and tell people about how amazing their diversity programs are. As evidenced by the hilarious Subnautica post, gamers care more about improving core gameplay rather than whether or not the player character has a vagina or whether or not the player character has a skin color other than white. Now, if we're talking about historical accuracy, it reminds me so much of Assassin's Creed Syndicate. If you missed it, Assassin's Creed Syndicate has tons and tons of female fighters and enemies in the Victorian London. 1, I am not sure if this is historically accurate, and 2, I am not sure if this is what the progressives really want, because the abundance of women enemies mean that I have to brutally stab them and pierce the insides of their skulls in order to progress the game. Is this really what you want, progressives? More ways to brutally kill women? The same thing goes to your demands of black people or non-whites in Kingdom Come Deliverance. My question is, wouldn't having non-whites in the game mean that they also need to suffer through horrendous medieval life? Wouldn't that also mean that you get to kill them in a brutally realistic setting or be killed by other NPCs? Is your demand of having more and more non-whites in the game also mean that you're allowed to kill them? I can just imagine Warhorse Studios adding non-whites in the game as the enemy and then Kotaku gets pissy at it. Or wait, maybe we make the non-whites to be friendly NPCs, but then those friendly NPCs don't contribute anything significant and are just background characters. Oh, okay, let's make them partner AIs, but partner AIs in games are rarely good and you would probably have a huge hatred for them. So let's make the player character a person of color, but the player character can also die, and if the player character is boring and uninteresting, then the game developer is racist? The moment you take one step to please these people, Warhorse, that's the moment where you're going to go into a never-ending spiral. But let's get back into the fact that one of the game developers supported Gamergate. Waypoint held off talking about Kingdom Come Deliverance because they're struggling in how to cover a game whose creative director has both publicly and forcefully supported Gamergate. An interesting conversation below that thread consists of someone asking the question, can you just talk about whether or not the game is good, in which one person replied that it's not why Waypoint listeners follow the site, and pointing out that there are literally dozens upon dozens of sites or blogs or YouTubers talking about whether or not the game is good. The most hilarious part is him ending the tweet by saying, "Get out with your low quality bait." That's right, apparently asking a game website to talk about whether or not the game is good is a low quality attempt at trolling. I agree with the last user of this thread saying that this person is not following them for the video games. It's been established that Waypoint is a freaking progressive hub who only cares about politics in games. When Anita Sarkeesian literally hasn't made any video, I think they're stepping in to do the job for her. In the description contained inside the article, they say that the developer of Kingdom Come also made highly questionable statements about the game's historical accuracy regarding representing people of color, and then they proceed to shield a podcast in which they talk about whether or not the existence of non-whites in the game are historically accurate, ignoring the fact that actually having non-whites in the game would also mean that they get killed by medieval brutality. One of the most interesting segment of this debacle is the forum replies. One person said that this is why I love Waypoint, actual ethical standards, to which I absolutely laughed my ass off. Hey, remember that time where Waypoint thought that it would be a good idea to publish a fanfiction completely abusing 9S from Nier Automata? Remember that time where they completely misrepresented the events and characters of Persona and Catherine and calling it mishandling of LGBT characters? Remember that time where they called the game transphobic because the game dead named a trans person even though the scene was taken completely out of context? Waypoint is ethical the same way my dick is 12 inches long. Absolute freaking lies, and I would shame myself just to prove that point. Here's another interesting response. This person is glad that Waypoint hasn't covered it. There's no ethical consumption, but apparently it's important for us as consumers and Waypoint as a publication which tries to follow some level of morals, lol, to be not complicit in hateful ideologies by supporting them. Yeah, there's a massive difference between supporting hateful ideologies and giving a coverage to game developers who have hateful ideologies. And if you consider Gamergate as a hateful ideology, then I guess you'd be right, because they're hateful against journalistic hacks who are going to hide behind the shield of women, people of color, and LGBT just to play the victim. The person asked the question, when the creator or co-creator is such an abhorrent individual whose entire identity seems to follow such a hateful idea, why should any of us be willing to even give their creation the time of day? I think being an abhorrent individual and holding hateful ideas are two separate things. You can be both, certainly, but to describe Daniel Favra as both is about as believable as Lex Luthor convincing the world that Superman is the real villain. You're taking his actions, words, and the entire Gamergate movement out of context, and I think you're doing it for your own malicious reasons. I think the moral message that we can learn from this entire debacle is you really need to define what you really want. Don't just wish for something. Contemplate in why you want that wish. What are the benefits, risks, consequences, obstacles, and sacrifices to Nyarlathotep Hotep that you have to do? Do you really want video games to have non-white characters as opposed to white characters? Why do you want this wish so much? Is this just a way for you to want to be noticed without sounding like a desperate anime girl? There are certainly tons and tons of articles out there that talk about how non-white people are not noticed by many people and they demand attention even at the dumbest of times. But there's very little of them that actually goes even further after achieving that step. Yay, you have non-white characters in Kingdom Come Deliverance, and insert any of the games that you complain about that are too white here. So what then? A Kotaku recommendation? I'd be more honored being recommended by a Nazi.